right, let's talk about The Black Phone 2. Now, ironically, I was actually excited to watch this one. And the reason why that's ironic is, if you remember, I did not love the first one. I thought it was fine. I gave it 3 stars, but I was not obsessed with it the way some people were when it was released. I don't know, I thought the marketing for this one looked really good, and I do want to give a warning for spoilers for the first Black Phone. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to talk about some plot points in The Black Phone 2 that would affect the first one, or like has to do with the ending of the first one. They're related naturally, so if you haven't watched it yet, don't watch this video. But the grabber is back, and he is definitely the best part about these movies. And I thought, given the trailer, it kind of reminded me of the concept of Silent Hill, of like a place calling you to go there, and you get visions and stuff calling you to come. And I love a snowy setting, so I was pretty excited going into this movie. Now, The Black Phone 2 is one of those movies that definitely deals with some heavier subjects, themes like grief and stuff, and characters that are definitely struggling. And if you are also someone who is struggling, today's video is sponsored by Grow Therapy. I have always been an advocate for therapy. Of course, I used to do a lot of mental health videos, and I've done therapy multiple times in my life, and I feel like everyone benefits from therapy at some point in their lives. I know it's helped me a lot over the years, so I always encourage people to reach out when they need help. And with Grow, they're making therapy more affordable and easier to access for everyone. You can book a session in as little as 2 days, and they have appointments available on the weekends and in the evenings, so it's more convenient for your schedule. Plus, you can choose between virtual appointments and in-person appointments, which I think is really nice because as a busy mom, I know virtual appointments are always going to be the way to go. And most importantly, you get to choose your therapist. There is no blind matching on Grow Therapy. You get to see the therapist and provider's credentials, bio, and all of their information right up front. Whether you want to filter by identity, gender, or faith, you can choose the provider that is the right match for you. And if they are not the right provider for you, it is really easy to switch. And what's really important for me is that Grow Therapy has vetted and trustworthy providers that have all of their credentials there for you to see. And what's really cool is you pay per session, so there's no subscriptions or hidden commitments. Grow also works with over 100 insurance companies and Medicaid in some states, so sessions are only around $21 with insurance. So make sure to go to growtherapy.co/possessed. I'll have a link in the description box down below as well, or you can scan the QR code here on the screen to get therapy that is the right fit for you today. Thank you again so much to Grow Therapy for sponsoring today's video. Bad dreams haunt 15-year-old Gwen as she receives calls from the Black Phone and sees disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp. Accompanied by her brother Finn, they head to the camp to solve the mystery, only to confront the grabber, a killer who's grown even more powerful in death. I did warn you that it would be some spoilers for The Black Phone, the first one. Obviously, the grabber does die in the end, but they brought him back. Not in the most unique way, but you know, we'll talk about that. Now, I feel like it's kind of weird for me to review the sequel as someone who didn't love the original one. And I'm worried I'm gonna be in the minority again when I say that I like The Black Phone 2 better than the first one. And I have my reasons, maybe personal reasons, I don't really know, but I have seen other people say this as well. I just think it works better with him being a supernatural entity instead of just a guy who kidnaps kids. The grabber is so cool, and I feel like he's such an underrated villain. Like we see Art the Clown all the time nowadays. He used to be an underrated villain. Now he's, you know, a little bit overrated if you ask me, but the grabber is really cool. Now, The Black Phone 2, is it extremely derivative and doesn't make a ton of sense? Yes. It's not the most creative movie ever made. I feel like we have seen this kind of story before. However, this is where my personal opinion comes in, which it's always going to be my personal opinion, right? It's my channel. It's my own opinions. But I love anything that has to do with alternate realities, dream dimensions, things like that. I'm a Pisces in the 12th house, so I just feel like I'm naturally very dreamy anyway. Maladaptive daydreaming were best friends, okay? So I love when there's this alternate reality taking place in a movie. However, I don't consider this movie to be overusing the trope of dream sequences, because you guys know I complain a lot about dream sequences, but that's when movies use it as a cop-out to make the movie really weird and horrifying only in dreams. Whereas in The Black Phone, I feel like it makes sense. That's the whole entire story. That is the only way the grabber can actually have an impact as a villain, versus movies not being able to be weird because it's too based in reality, or they just don't have the guts to do it. So I feel like it's safe to say, if you don't like movies that have dream sequences or take place in dreams, and you don't like snowy atmospheres, and you don't like the movie Sinister, this is not going to be your movie. Whereas I was pleasantly surprised by The Black Phone 2 of how much I actually liked it. It's not my favorite movie of the year by any means, but I was expecting it to be on par with the first one. Even though I was more excited going in, I was just cautiously optimistic, and I still don't believe it lived up to the marketing of it. I feel like the trailer was better than the actual movie. That's why you can't watch the damn trailers. Just don't watch them. Anyway, let's get into what I liked, what I didn't like, and then we'll do a couple spoilers. I actually liked a lot in this movie. It's not totally surprising because I kind of anticipated I would at least like a lot of the major elements going on, things like the grabber returning, how he was returning, and the setting and atmosphere. But you still never know. You never know what they're actually going to do in the movie. Okay, so I love the grabber, obviously. That's like the first thing that I loved about the movie. Is I actually prefer him in this movie versus the first one, but I'm still always left wanting more. I want more characterization from him. I want more dynamic scenes with him. I feel like he's always one note, but he's such a unique character and a villain, and I just want more every time. I feel like he was more over the top in the first one, of like a goofy, kind of thing, and then in this one he's scarier, which makes sense logistically because he died. So maybe he's not so silly goofy anymore because he died. So he's not feeling it anymore, and he's just a little bit scarier. Not only did I love the dream settings, but I also love how they executed it and how they differentiated the dreams from reality. It's in true Scott Derrickson style, okay? It's Sinister. It's the way he did Sinister is the same way he did the dreams in The Black Phone 2. Can a movie be derivative of your own movie? Can you be too inspired by a movie you created? Is that considered derivative? I don't know. I can't hold it against him. He has a certain look that he wants to go for, and he does it very well. So obviously this is very reminiscent of Sinister. Still loved it. I still love the dreams. I like anything taking place in a dream like this, where it's like a weird reality, and especially in his style, I feel like it just works really well. Like I said, the setting, love the setting. I love anything in the snow. I think that's a great setting. It automatically adds tension because it's hard to navigate. You know that it's cold, and just the elements are there. I also really liked all the practical effects. I thought all the effects in this were really good. Any CGI they had going on didn't bother me. It looked good, and they opted for a lot of practical effects. So I appreciated that. All of that was good. Now, this movie, another thing I was pleasantly surprised by is how much gorier and darker it was. Now, I have a bad memory, which is, kind of bad when it comes to my job. But correct me if I'm wrong, is this movie gorier and darker than the first one? Because I remember in the first one, it's disturbing conceptually. We do see some stuff, but I feel like in this one, it is much more violent. We get a lot more of the violence on screen versus the first one. So I was a little bit taken aback at how much darker this one was and more disturbing. But I was happy about it. Can I say that? I don't know if I was. I don't want to say anything too much because you probably know why I am, a little bit, why I'd consider it more disturbing, but, he deals with children, okay? He likes to kidnap kids. So to me, that's just a dark storyline, period, whether it's implied or we actually see some stuff. And we see some stuff in this one. So I liked it because it's a horror movie. So I want that. And for some reason, it wasn't as disturbing as something like Bring Her Back, even though it was similar. I feel like it has to do with the psychological elements. Anyway, I'm just rambling. I don't know what I'm saying. While it's gory and dark, I don't think it's too much. It never pushes it too far for me. I really liked the characterization in this movie. I think the characters themselves have a good story there. I feel like the story itself isn't really thorough or like well thought out, but we'll get to that when I talk about things I didn't like. But when it comes to the characters, I feel like we get a lot with them. We spend a lot of time with them. There's little things that they do, behaviors and whatnot, that just reveal a lot of who they are as people, how they're dealing with grief and things like that. So I feel like we spend more time with the emotions of the characters themselves versus the actual story and like the backdrop of the movie. And I'm not mad at that. I enjoy a good character-driven story. We still have a lot of other stuff going on. I don't want you to think this is all character. It's not. It's just I feel like there's a little bit more delved into when it comes to the character story than the actual story with the grabber and things. And I'm actually glad that they do this because given the story, it is a highly emotional story. It's high stakes with them, and I think it's good that we go that direction and we put all the emotion behind it because we're dealing with kids at the end of the day, and I feel like it needs to have that emotional backdrop in order to support all of the disturbing stuff going on screen and things. I was fighting tears with this one. Yes, I was. I didn't cry. No tears fell, but it was another one where I was like, I really had to fight it. So let's talk about what I didn't like about the Black Phone 2. The first thing, although I love that the grabber's back, obviously I want him back, but I don't necessarily love how we got him back, okay? It was very derivative. I feel like you know probably what movie I'm going to compare it to, but I'll save it for spoilers just in case. But he only navigates through dreams. I mean, it's right there. I just feel like that kind of concept of like only doing stuff in dreams and like, you know, the dreams being very special and a lot of horror, you know, is saved for that. I feel like we've seen that before. Again, I don't hate it. I like, we can't always make super original stories. Everything's been done. So like naturally we're going to have a lot of horror movies that take place with dreams because dreams are scary, right? It's the unknown, it's the subconscious. But obviously it's not going to be the most original story out there. There was some humor in this that just did not land with me. I feel like a movie like this does not need that kind of humor or side plots. Again, the characterization was good. There was some side plots that I feel like we didn't necessarily need in this, and then they were just kind of there to offer some humorous elements. I didn't like any of the humor in this, but the audience I was watching it with were laughing. So, you know, it's effective for some, but to me, I'm very selective and picky when it comes to my humor in horror movies, and this was just not it for me. I felt like the lore of it all and like the reasoning for everything that was happening was a little bit weak, and there's really nowhere to go with it. I mean, it's kind of a shallow plot point. There was a lot of plot dumping, I feel like, and explaining to the viewer how exactly he was doing this and like what was going on. It was like verbally explained a lot to the viewer as if we were stupid. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. I'm not sure how they could have gone about it any other way, but you know, the story's not the most original. How they describe the story's not great. So that was the weaker side of it for me. But given all of that, I liked more than I disliked. So I guess that's a positive. I think I would give this 3.5 stars. I was thinking 3 originally, but I gave the first one 3 and I like this one more. So I'm going to give it another half star. Definitely doesn't deserve a 4, but 3.5 feels fine for this movie. I enjoyed it overall. I think if you liked the first one, you would like this one. I think. I don't really know because I wasn't the biggest fan of the first one, so I don't know. But if you want to chime in the comments and tell us what you thought, that would be great. I do have a couple spoilers to just touch on just because I like to throw it in there, but I feel like it's it doesn't necessarily need a ton of spoilers, but I'm going to go into it now, talk a little bit about the lore and the backstory of the grabber in this movie, and get into all of that. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't watch the rest of this video. So obviously the movie I was referencing when it came to how derivative this movie is Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, Freddy Krueger navigates dreams. You can die in dreams, and it's very similar in the sense that how he hurts you in the dream reflects into real life. So Gwen would get injured in her dream or be battling, and it would look like she's going through a possession, like she's possessed or something. She would get cut like on her arm and start bleeding a lot in the dream, and then in real life she would do that as well. So it's very reminiscent of Nightmare on Elm Street to me. And I do want to say derivative because it's like naturally, of course, the grabber can only affect you or hurt you within a dream because he's a supernatural being now. He is not alive, so he's not actually there. So let's talk about why he's not actually there and like why he is navigating dreams and why that is and why he's still able to be around. So the actual lore of it, the backstory, there were 3 boys at Camp Alpine Lake, and they were his first kills. So I believe he was a camp counselor there, and he killed these 3 boys. So we get to see the 3 boys' deaths very violently. Multiple times, or we see a lot of them as well. Gwen is obviously dreaming of them, so we see a lot of that, and that's kind of what I was referring to, that this is gorier and darker because this boy's head is like cut in half, like it's dark. And so their bodies were never found, which I feel like it's very obvious where their bodies would be. And how can you have this man who searches every day for these boys' bodies, and he never checked the lake just because they did once already? He never went and looked. They found those bodies so fast. He never went and looked there again. Yet you spend every day looking for these bodies. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. This is what I mean by but the story itself is not the strong suit of this movie. So I guess because the boys were never found, their souls are not at rest, the grabber is still able to move around. But as soon as their bodies are found, he's now vulnerable enough to be defeated. Again, not sure if it makes total sense. Like, when they first explained it, I was like, what? And then it kind of played out, and I was like, okay, I guess they just needed to put the bodies at rest, and now the grabber can no longer be. Okay. Again, I feel like we've heard a story like that 100 times, putting the bodies to rest and everything, finding the bones. The Ring is literally about that. So, it's all very derivative of something. But I get it. They wanted the grabber to come back. This is how they wanted him to come back. I'd almost prefer him to be a ghost at this point. Like, I'm not mad. I liked the dream sequences and everything. I didn't like the story of the boys and like finding the bodies and defeating him and all of that. That was fine. But I just feel like there were other avenues you could have gone. Michael Myers, supernatural, I don't know. I feel like you could just bring him back in different ways. So as I mentioned, I fought back tears. A couple scenes did make me want to cry, but it was really the final scene that got me. I feel like it's just harder as a mom in that scene. I mean, it could affect anybody. I'm not saying you have to be a mom, but as a mom of a daughter, and she ends up talking to her mom on the phone, it was just so emotional and sad. But I honestly, this is one of those movies, I don't mind the happier ending. I normally wouldn't root for that, but given the content of the movies and like how dark they are, I'm not mad at the happy ending and how she gets to talk to her mom and know everything's okay. And I feel like Gwen and Finn can finally like grieve and process and move on and things like that. So I don't know. I feel like I was content with a happy ending in this movie. So those are all my thoughts on The Black Phone 2. It was fine. It's not a movie I'm super excited about, but I enjoyed my viewing experience of it, and it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be and a lot better than the first one. So I do recommend it. It was decent, especially if you like the first one. I think you would like this one. I don't know. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.